Guys, we have to talk. We have to talk about Afterlife. They just don't stop releasing bangers. What is going on? We have to analyze another track. And the track is called Drown. It's remixed by Massano. And it's just incredible. It has two amazing lead sounds, and we want to have a look at those sounds today because somehow they don't even work in the actual Afterlife context. They're very strong, techno-ish kind of style. We have a very, very distorted 303 and we have a super metallic step sound. So how do we get them into an Afterlife context, and especially how do we make those sounds? We will find that out today, and for sure you can get everything again for free. Just follow the link in the description. Let's start by listening. Alright, this is what we're gonna talk about today, guys. So, as you can see, I tried to rebuild the situation right in front of the drop. And just to tell that from the beginning, the beat and all those rise effects, they were just modeled to sound kind of alike. So the focus is definitely on those two tracks, and we want to talk a lot about them. So maybe just a brief summary of what's happening in the other tracks. We have a 808, and that was just processed a little bit. I have this kind of offbeat bass, but it's actually really filtered and just there to fill up the space in the low end a little bit. And then there's a snare drum, and we can check on the reverb maybe here. You can hear this very metallic and kind of bright reverb, which I noticed he used in his remix. And then there's three kind of rising tracks. We have a snare roll with a volume automation, if I'm not mistaken. Exactly, there we go. And a white noise with a filter automation. And then there's another FX riser, which is basically just two unison saw waves being pitched up and running through this shimmer reverb down here. So that's the whole magic on this. But now let's talk about the two sounds, right? So what's interesting is that we have a rhythmic pattern and then we have another rhythmic pattern, and they're actually not really the same, but somehow they fit together very well. And then they're also played by different sounds. So the first one, and we're gonna start with this one, is a very metallic step. You can see there's also some processing happening, so this is gonna be a little more dive deep today. But first of all, let's have a look at the serum patch. It actually took a long time to find out what this sound really made. So first of all, this sub oscillator, that's even not necessary anymore, because in the beginning I was trying all sorts of frequency modulation stuff using the sub oscillator. Later on I noticed that it's actually something else. First of all though, we have to start on the octave and kind of notes. So maybe a quick look at the MIDI pattern. This is only A's. And you can see the pattern. It wasn't that hard to find this pattern because you could literally just look at the waveform in the break and find the steps. So here and there, maybe we can talk about this for a second. Here and there, there's some add-ons, like for example here and here, right? Instead of this, we get this. So just some simple add-ons and variations to the pattern. Nothing too special, but this is definitely what keeps the track kind of interesting and what also keeps the pattern kind of interesting over time. So keep that in mind when you try to make those kind of static call and response patterns. And now back to the sound. So we have two oscillators and both are in the saw shape, but they both get kind of warped around heavily. So The most important thing maybe is the -7 here. So I noticed that he's using the 4th note of the scale in addition to the actual root note, the A. So I figured that it's probably not 2 notes playing, but rather one oscillator being tuned down. So then the next thing that is important is we have pulse wave modulation and ring modulation here. And you know, basically his sound is just like some lower harmonics and then a crazy overtone harmonic structure that can be made out of everything, you know, but it's really, really hard to get exactly this. The closest I got to is now having oscillator B as a saw wave, playing the root note with the pulse wave modulation, modulating, doing a ring modulation, right, on the oscillator A, which is tuned 7 semitones down, so on the 4th of the octave, right? And the ring modulation is on 100%. That's how the sound works. It might sound a little complicated. You get the preset, as I said, for free, so you can check on it once again. And as I said before, I think it's a good preset to kind of just work around, try different things. For example, it has nothing to do with the original sound then anymore, but you know, that's the idea of having a preset, is to manipulate it in the way that you want to. Like, for example, we switch to frequency modulation and go down a little bit. We get this, which is just insane. I mean, it just sounds incredible. It just sounds crazy, right? And then we can also automate the pulse width here, which is also an interesting effect on the sound. We could even take an envelope and put it on here. It becomes a laser gun more and more, so it totally depends on your taste. But what's really important about the preset, maybe let's have a quick look at this, is actually the noise here. So I chose the microchord noise because this is a kind of rough and dirty variation of noise, I feel like. And it's put to 7%, which is almost nothing, but it is something. And it's pushed by this envelope, almost 100 milliseconds, just for a strong transient. You will notice when you listen to his track that the transient is super strong, which is why I included some of the processing, and we could even do more about this, but you know, didn't want to push it too high. And then there's this LFO set to 132 notes, and it's also on the level of the noise, so maybe we can listen to the noise in solo. It's also not running through the filter. So basically it's a very, very strong transient, and in some points on the release of the sound here, you can hear that this kind of LFO movement shatters the sound around a little bit, which is something I noticed in his sound, and that was very important. Lastly, one tip, if you rebuild those sounds, those kind of metallic steps, if you want something like this and maybe you don't go with this preset, or you want to go with this preset, one thing that you should be aware of is that the sustain knob here on the amp envelope is very crucial for the sound. So you can see it's put almost to nothing, like it's minus 30 dB, but there's still a lot of release, which makes the sound very plucky and then fade out quietly, right? So if you put this up to 0, it sounds totally like, you know, overloaded. And this is also mainly due to the pattern, right? Because the notes follow each other so fast. But depending on the pattern, you should really, really, really consider putting the sustain down, so it sounds like this, which is really a key to that sound. Anyway, check it out, and let's have a look at the effects real quick. We have different effects on here, and let's just mute them and go after them one by one. This is what it sounds like. I mean, there's no effects in here, right? We could have also put some distortion in there instead of the pedal, for example. But this really shows you that processing can also be a way to work up your sound. So you should also just save. This actually makes me think that I want to give you the preset with some effects in Serum. So I'm going to do that after recording the video. But yeah, anyways, you need this pedal. to give it this kind of, it's more or less some kind of compression mixed with adding a lot of noise to it, right? And then the OTT, which is only 13% here, but a little louder. It adds a little more of this kind of compressed and stronger feeling. Then we have an EQ, just cutting the lows and boosting on the 2000 hertz kind of frequencies to make it more kind of in your face, right? The frequencies around 2000, 3000 especially are the ones where our voices, for example, are located. So our ears kind of tend to listen very carefully when we hear this, or they're even like, we kind of notice them in a louder way than other frequencies. So if you want a lead to be very, very upfront, you should probably have some very, very good high mids, right? So that's why we push here. Now it sounds like this, and then we have this chain here, which is an echo, a reverb, and a dry chain. So let me name that just real quick. And dry chain is obviously empty, and then we have a reverb, which is a hybrid reverb, 2-second plate, a little smaller than usual, and it sounds like this. So again, this kind of metallic feeling as we had it on the snare, and then there's this echo, which is on the left 1/8 notes and on the right 1/8 dotted, so it's kind of very stereo and has this own kind of rhythm to it. I think this is the one he used, but I'm not 100% sure, to be honest. But there's plenty of ways you can play around with that for your track in the first place. A glue compressor to put it all together, and just some leveling in the end, and it sounds like this. Which brings us to the next sound, the very distorted 303 that sounds so techno. Like, it sounds so techno, but it still works in this Afterlife context. So let's have a look at that. We have some effects on here as well, echo, saturation, EQing, glue compression, all the typical stuff, so we can go through that in a minute. I just want to show you real quick. This is audio files because I made this with a product from our shop. It's the 303 acid analog patch, and it's made entirely out of Ableton plugins. You have a lot of settings here that you can see. I even have some effects included, which are not available here right now, but you will get them if you get it in our shop, right? And there's also a lot of MIDI files included, so if you like the acid sound, consider getting the Ableton only acid patch in our shop. Right, so let's have a look. If we put out all the effects, then we just have the distorted 303 coming from the pack I just described, which sounds like this. And now we just add some effects to kind of make it work with the other sounds as well. So first of all, it also needs a nice echo, but it's a different one. I chose 16th notes and also added some pre-delay reverbs, right? So pre-delay in this case means the reverb is put ahead of the echo, right? So first there's a reverb on the sound, and then this reverb plus sound combination, wow, gets the echo, right? I hope you get what I mean. The other way around would be post, then you put it behind the echo, which means the echo gets into a reverb. But like this, I feel it's a little more subtle, and it's a ping pong delay actually, and it's not that loud. You can hear very nice in his track that all the notes have this kind of direct response, you can say. So that's why the 16th notes are necessary to make it very fast and bouncy, right? And we have a saturator here just to put it all together a little more, and we're just cutting the lows on the EQ and some glue compression. And the last one here, it's an effect rack I made for another video here on the channel that was up like 2 or 3 months ago, and it was about dimensions and automations, especially for arpeggios, but generally for everything. So this is just an auto filter and a hybrid reverb actually, and if you move this up, you can see the auto filter starts filtering and the reverb starts existing in a way, right? So what this does is it kind of softens the sound, takes away the low end, and then also puts it into a reverb to make it a little more diffuse, right? So it's perfect for resolving a sound. This is why it's called like this. And it's perfect to, you know, for example, at the end of a break, kind of make everything go away a little bit, which is why this automation happens right here in front of the drop, right? It sounds like this. And you can hear in his track that he's also using something like this, that he's kind of filtering the lows away and let it go into a reverb just a little bit. So that's actually it already on the 303. You can, oh, I forgot this one here in the end. It's a Redux, and I just gotta tell you, just gotta take a moment to say this. Ableton 11 has a lot of nice features. I would definitely suggest to get it, because one of them, for example, is the new Redux. If you remember Ableton 10, the old Redux was kind of weird and no one really got to use it because there was no dry wet, there was no filters, there was actually nothing somehow. And now the Redux is a super nice tool because you can adjust the dry wet, you have this kind of shape and jitter options, you have filter options, and what this effect here does with those settings, you can probably hear it very good. It adds a stereo noise on top of every hit. And it's very nice in general, can be used for a lot of stuff because it follows the rhythm of the sound that you put it on. Like, just to show you real quick, as a little bonus tip here in the end, if we put it on the beat group, you can hear the noise goes kind of because it, you know, it notices the kick and the snare hit. So imagine having a 16th note bass line and a kick drum and putting it on there. The notes will go. So I think you can already imagine that you can make great noise textures with that, and you don't even have to record them or, you know, try to find a good pattern. You just put it on your drums, for example, and there you go. So that's a very nice trick. And I used it here because you can notice that he also has this kind of very high frequencies on the 303. And to conclude it, we can also have a look here at the pattern real quick. I mean, it's just a rhythmic pattern. If we compare the two patterns he used, then we can see that, let's vote that they're not really the same, but kind of, right? So this is a difference, but a lot of notes like this one, this one, this one somehow, this one, this one, this one, right? And this one all match. So he has kind of used the same rhythm with two different sounds, and they just call and respond each other all the time, and it works perfectly. Guys, I hope you enjoyed this recreation. Let us know if you want anything else to be covered on this channel. We're open for any suggestions and looking forward to make more nice content for you. Until then, I would say get this free Ableton session in the description and make some nice music. See you soon.